On a national holiday in 1935, crowds gathered at a Sydney aquarium to marvel at a newly captured tiger shark. Awe quickly turned to horror when the predator regurgitated a human arm, perfectly preserved and bearing a distinct tattoo. Forensics would reveal the limb wasn't bitten off, but rather removed by a sharp tool. Further clues led police into a tangled web of fraud, murder, and conspiracy. So today, we explore the puzzling shark arm case. This is Red Web. Welcome back, Task Force, to another episode of Red Web, the podcast all about unsolved mysteries, true crime, and the unknown. I'm your resident mystery enthusiast, Trevor Collins, and joining me hearing this case for the very first time, Alfredo Diaz.
Dude, I'm all in. We're talking about sharks. I love animals. I love sharks specifically. One of my goals is to go cage diving with great whites.
Woo.
But okay, you said regurgitated an arm. So I was thinking like, oh, did they toss the body in with the shark? Even then, the shark isn't necessarily going to go for it. And then you said, okay, cleanly sawed off. I'm like, oh, so they were really just trying to get rid of the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
But then also, how did they get in?
Oh, I see. You're running with some assumptions that I can't wait to blow your mind on.
Okay.
Because this case...
Oh, did the shark eat it and then get... Because the shark it was newly put in.
You're cooking now.
Oh my God, what?
Yeah, dude.
Well, how do you track that down then if it was like it happened in the ocean?
This is a wild one. This is probably one of my new favorite cases just from that standpoint alone. I don't know how we missed this one, so thank you, Task Force member Piplup Cola, for submitting this one. The next couple of weeks will be sprinkled heavily with Task Force submitted episodes. It's been a while. We've accrued over the last year or so all of the form submissions of topics, movies, and mysteries and everything, and so this one has made it into the list finally. It's wild, Fredo. You're totally on the right track. Because not only did a shark regurgitate an arm, that arm was perfectly preserved, but also the shark had just been put into the tank and the shark was out in the wild. What's going on? And this arm is cleanly sawed off. Wild.
Yeah, because I got questions.
Yes, sir.
I got a lot of questions now.
It's like what would have been a perfect crime in theory, completely exposed by this shark. This shark's just like tattling on whoever did this deed.
It really did. And like, how unfortunate for someone like, okay, you feed it to a shark outside, or maybe you didn't even try to feed it to the shark at all. You just wanted to, bury it in the ocean. And the shark just snitched on you so hard. I wouldn't even be mad. I'd be like, what are the chances that they captured the shark and the shark ate the body and then they regurgitated it, didn't even take it all down. And then I'm just like, wow. Yeah, I know it was meant to happen. I was meant to get caught.
Yeah, dude, you're totally right. This was somehow meant to happen. It's like, you've heard of star-crossed lovers. This is like a star-crossed crime. But of course, before we dive in, Fredo, lots going on in the Red Web universe. Just a few things in the immediate future to talk about. This Wednesday, we have another poll at redwebpod.com. These are opportunities, Task Force, for you to choose our movie club, our mysteries that we're going to talk about in this podcast, sometimes locations that we're going to go. Sometimes we just want your opinion when it's an all-out brawl between cryptids. All sorts of things to gather your insights on. And then this Friday is a movie club as voted by you and submitted by you. So it will be VHS, classic horror movie compilation. I'm very excited because I haven't seen it yet. We haven't recorded it yet, to be totally honest. That's how things work. So I'm very excited to watch that one. So come hang out with us as Fredo breaks down the plot and our thoughts and everything. Also, since it is live next Wednesday, I want you to mark this on your calendars. Break Room will be at 5 p.m. Central Time, so come hang out with us as we record live. Be part of the conversation as we record that. And also, again, I want to shout out Sinners was our movie club from earlier this month. It is still free and will be free for anybody on our Patreon, so head to redwebpod.com if you want to listen to Sinners as movie club. It is literally one of my favorite movies now of all time, and that way you can get a little taste as to what movie club is every other week. Future Trevor here, butting in once more because March is super busy. Red Web Scary Stories launched last Friday the 13th. That's right, it's out right now, so no matter where you listen to Red Web, it's going to be tucked right up cozy next to it. Thank you all so much for supporting us as we launched the pilot last year. Now we will be launching it every other Thursday moving forward, so make sure to mark your calendars or just follow us. You'll see it here. And then another surprise development since recording this episode, Red Web Radio 2 is coming this Thursday. We are so stoked about it. What is Red Web Radio? Well, it's basically some chill beats that you can listen to while you study, sleep, or do whatever you need to do. And it's riddled with sound bites from popular episodes from Red Web's past. So if you know Lo-Fi Girl, or if you like lo-fi beats, this is right up your alley. If you don't know anything of what I'm talking about, we still think you're going to love it because the music is a perfect ambiance. Put that on while you work, and the art is incredible. There's looping art that is in the Task Force HQ that's riddled with Easter eggs. So if you want to check that out, once again, it's coming out on Thursday on our YouTube page, youtube.com/redwebpod. All right, back to Past Me. All righty, with the business behind us, it's time to talk about the business of the incident. So let me take you back, Fredo, to April 17th, 1935. Two fishermen are going out into the Sydney harbor looking for a shark. This is about 2 kilometers or 1.25 miles off the coast of Coogee Beach, there again in Sydney, Australia. And to give you an idea of the beach we're going to be talking about today, I do have an image right out of the gate. This is from the 1930s era, so this is as it would have looked.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Damn, that old school vibe. You even got some trees in the background.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a beach. Let me tell you, you go there, it's not going to be some tropical. There's so many people, shoulder to shoulder.
Oh, yeah. It's super busy.
Yeah, it's like the beach on like Jaws. And everyone's just slammed. You think it's a holiday.
Yeah. And again, you see those cars that go, yeah, the street's just right there. Yeah, this is a beach that, yeah, you could go swimming at. But it's certainly a sightseeing tourist destination. There's the pier going on. That's where this aquarium/bathing pool is. I do want to say, regarding those two fishermen, depending on the source, I think one source in particular identified them as Albert Hobson and his nephew, Ron Hobson. So Albert and his brother, Charles Hobson, were running an aquarium here at this beach. It was an aquarium/swimming bath. And I say that because during the summer, the tank became a large saltwater swimming pool. And then during the winter, they would transform it, basically empty, flush it, refill it, turn it into an aquarium intended to display some of the local wildlife. Now, interestingly, the tanks mostly focused on displaying sharks due to the large amount of public intrigue. Like you even said, there's just a really interesting fascination with sharks. Mm-hmm. They are apex predators in the water, and we're just little creatures from the trees. And when we get in the water, well, pardon the pun, we're out of our depth.
Yeah, I agree. As much as we're like, oh, we're the dominant species, you stick a human, just kick it in the water, mm-hmm. and you go, there's a shark in there, they're terrified. They're scared. Instantly, they realize the food chain. Yup.
There is something primordial about that terror there. Now, what's also interesting is that around this time period, 1930s, Sydney, Australia, shark attacks had become relatively common during this time period, which is also why people had this morbid fascination with them as an apex predator. So they wanted to come to this aquarium where they could see this danger up close and personal without, obviously, the danger side. So, like I said, through the 20s and 30s, this time period has often been referred to as the shark era because of this high frequency of attacks. And when looking into that, the reason why is because I believe it was the late 1800s, or at least a few decades prior to this moment, Sydney Harbor had opened up and became legal to go swimming and bathing in. Prior to that, you just weren't allowed. And there was no real protection. If you've ever been to a resort or on a beach, you might see this commonly now. You'll see like nets just maybe 100 feet out. And this dulls the waves, but it also prevents wildlife from coming in and stinging, biting, or otherwise harming people, tourists in the waters. And what happened here, all of these attacks did eventually lead to a 1937 implementation of shark nets. So it all kind of died down in the later parts of the decade, but there were several decades where people were like, it was like Jaws out there. You said it.
Dang.
It looks like it, and it was like that.
Well, I mean, as the centuries go by, as the years go by, humans are encroaching more and more and on this planet. We're taking up more space. I mean, look at cities, right? Any city, you've seen a plot of land that's like, oh, that's a lot of free open space. Boom, there's an apartment building on it now, or what? You know what I mean?
High rise. Yep, you're totally right.
Like, because there's just people just looking at every little inch, just going like, what can I put there? What can I build there? How can I make money off of that piece of land if I bought it, etc.?
Gotta make the money. Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, you're gonna get some tension with the wildlife, but then also you what happens for the most part is you also push off a lot of the wildlife.
Yeah, usually wildlife runs off, and in this case, wildlife kind of pushes back. I don't want to paint the picture as if it's so horrifying. For decades, people are getting mauled and killed, but it was in fact called the shark era because there was a definite increase in prevalence of attacks. So, okay, it wasn't like Jaws, but you're right. I mean, humans want to be human spreading all over the place, and, the idea of imminent domain or just, I don't know. We like to explore.
Yeah.
And so that's what's happening. And that's what this aquarium is doing, is satisfying that curiosity by bringing that dangerous wildlife in.
Mm-hmm.
So now in 1935, these brothers were once again looking to capture sharks for their tank, this time in a focus of the upcoming Anzac Day. So Anzac Day takes place April 25th, every single year in Australia and in New Zealand. It is the day of remembrance of those who lost their lives fighting in battle. Originally, it was created to remember those who lost their lives in the Gallipoli campaign during their first appearance in World War I. The name Anzac actually stands for Australia and New Zealand Army Corps, hence Anzac. So it's a big celebration because not only is it important and relevant to the time period, but it was also the 20th anniversary of this holiday, essentially. And so the brothers knew that tourism would be high. There would be a lot of extra grand celebrations in and around Sydney for this historic day, certainly at this historic landmark. And thus, Albert and Ron set their sights on a shark that would maybe match the occasion. Let's see if we can hook ourselves a big one. So they go out, they fix up a few line traps, and they bait those with mackerel. They then left those traps overnight and came back the next day to see if they had caught anything, if they had found a shark or anything. And it turns out they got more than they had bargained for. Because not only had they captured a shark, the mackerel attracted a shark, right? And then that shark being caught on the line acted as bait for yet a bigger shark. And so another shark comes along, this time a tiger shark, and kind of attacks that shark. So you have kind of like an aquatic turducken here, or as I've called a shasharkle.
Yeah.
And so when hoisting up this line, they find that they have what they note as a 4.4 meter, approximately 14-foot tiger shark. And they go back to shore to kind of put this then in the aquarium. Now, some reports state that the tiger shark was actually a little smaller, somewhere like 3.5 meters, which would be about 11 feet. But either way, the average tiger shark grows between 3 and 4 meters. So we're talking about a big boy here, somewhere between 10 and 14 feet. That's a hefty, healthy sized shark. Now, if you've ever heard about sharks in captivity, you will know that they don't do well. Their behavior kind of shifts to the negative. Sharks are just not meant to be in captivity. A lot of them die from starvation because their appetite dulls down very quickly. Mm-hmm. They get very desensitized because there's no stimulus for this single soul hunter. And so that's kind of what was observed here. Despite the large crowds gathering, excited to see this massive tiger shark, the shark seemed to be irritable, listless, it was refusing to eat, and it was kind of lethargic, had low energy, which on one hand matches what you would see of a normal shark in captivity, depending on the species of shark. But in this case, there might be something more, and we'll talk about that. But before we do, per a few articles, we couldn't for sure fact check it, but a lot of articles point to this image that I'm showing you here as an actual photo of the shark itself in the tank. The only one we could find of it.
Dang, that's a cool silhouette of a shark.
That's a shark right there.
That's a shark. Oh, beautiful silhouette.
Mm-hmm.
It's in, I guess, what, is the top of the tank?
Yeah, it does look like you're just looking down into a pool.
Yeah, it does look like it. Initially, I was like, oh, it looks like a pool. Like a shark in a pool.
Yeah. And so when they say hybrid aquarium pool, think more pool that sometimes has sharks in it.
Okay, interesting. Did it have the traditional what we know today where like you can go and see it behind glass underwater?
That's a very good question. I didn't see that anywhere, but that doesn't mean that that's not part of it. You know, even
Yeah.
pools sometimes have those little windows, but
It's just interesting. It was like, oh, you can see all the beautiful sea creatures from the top looking down.
right. And also it's behind a very chintzy chain. There's just one single chain.
It really is. Yeah.
Like a child's gonna fall in.
A lot of faith in the human being not being stupid here.
Right. Let's just say OSHA wouldn't be too happy.
Yeah, you can take a half step over that chain and get going.
Oh yeah. Let's jump forward now. It's still 1935, still April, but now it's April 25th. And the aquarium actually sees record numbers. Tourists are super impressed by the fact that they have this enormous tiger shark. They're all flocking to come see it. Again, Sharkmania is going wild. The numbers rapidly dwindle though as the day goes on, and by the end of the day, reportedly there's only about 14 people present to see the shark. And it was around this time, around 4:30 p.m., that the shark suddenly shifted in mood, right? It was listless before, not eating, but now it seems to become a little agitated. It's throwing itself seemingly against the side of the aquarium, the side of the pool here. It's swimming erratically from the deep end to the shallow end and back and forth. And finally, and maybe this was also explaining some of its before behaviors, but finally it seems to retch and it vomits. At first, only a few things like bile, birds and rats, whatever it maybe could get a hold of in the tank, but then shockingly, onlookers saw as it vomited out an almost pristine human arm. I have a photo of it. It isn't grotesque or anything.
Right.
It's cropped so you don't see any of the gnarly edges of it, but we do have a photo of that arm. And Fredo, tell me what you think. This was an eaten arm.
It's got a tattoo on it?
It's got a tattoo on it.
The guy boxing or something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I can't really see what he's boxing because it's the right half of it. There's some shadowing and it's a black and white photo, so you can't really tell. But I mean, that can help identify a person.
Absolutely.
That's an arm. It doesn't look all like torn up from the angle that I'm looking at here.
No, you can see a little bit of arm hair on the left side. You can see freckles.
It's kind of gnarly how intact that is.
Absolutely. And just so you know, it is two men boxing one another. On the right side, it is a little hard to see, yeah.
Got it.
So when it's too cold to swim, these guys are chucking some sharks in there. It's a pool, is what I'm kind of gathering.
Yeah, it's a pool. And they're like, hey, take a look. Dude, got some sharks.
Yeah. I was picturing, when you're a kid and you're walking through those tunnels of glass and sharks, turtles, and all sorts of fish are swimming around you. It's not like that.
No, not at all.
No, it's not like that. It's like the neighborhood pool, concrete, tiled edges, and there's a shark in there, which was my absolute nightmare.
Yep.
Go underwater, close your eyes, immediately you envision a shark in the deep end. Well, now there is.
Yeah.
Task Force, I want to talk to you guys for a second. Don't skip. I know this is the gap in the episode, but while you're here, if you don't mind, I want to say that this episode is sponsored by you guys. That's right. Everybody in the Task Force HQ over at redwebpod.com supports this and every other episode of Red Web that we've ever done. Supporting us on Patreon is the #1 way to keep us stable. And I talk about it at the top of every show. I try to keep it snappy, but while we're here, let me expand. What do you get with a membership at redwebpod.com? In no particular order, of course, you get this podcast completely ad-free. We love to talk about Movie Club. That is in there as well. Every first and third Friday of the month, we put out a new episode of Movie Club, digesting our favorite horror movies. Sometimes it's crappy, sometimes it's classic, and sometimes it's just a personal favorite of ours. And if you love horror like we do, we also put out a horror gameplay every single month. It's essentially our test chamber to keep us safe whenever we go ghost hunting or do other tomfoolery type things. Of course, we have Discord events like Break Room Live, where you can come hang out with us. We talk about what's going on in our lives, get to know us behind the scenes of Red Web, what's motivating us, driving us, what we're interested in, and of course, be a part of that conversation live. It gets recorded, edited, then uploaded for your exclusive enjoyment in the following month. We also have other things like polls, which let you decide what we're going to do in our Red Web episodes, whether it be Movie Club, Red Web, our gameplay series, the Scary Stories podcast, which is actually available right now if you want to go check it out. Or sometimes we just want to see which cryptid is going to win in your opinion. It's just a fun way to engage with you all. We also put out research outlines every month so you can see kind of the data, the information that we've cobbled together in our research, and you see what I'm looking at during the episode. So when I'm bobbing and weaving between Fredo's questions, his reactions, and also the factual data, this is what I'm staring at. We also reserve the right to inundate you with bonus stuff every now and then just to give you a tease. Task Force members at redwebpod.com were the first to see the logo unveil, the first to get a glimpse at Red Web Radio, which is coming out this week, by the way, on Thursday, mark the calendars. They get access to deleted scenes from ghost hunts, and we also have so many other bonus content ideas to come in the future that will continue to expand the exclusive library that you guys get by supporting us directly. And last but not least, of course, we have Discord access where you can meet with other community members, talk about the theories behind each of the episodes, and also basically any other topic you want to talk about. It is like an old school internet forum, and it's one of my favorite things that we have. And as I like to say, we have more than weekly things coming out at this point because we've grown with your support. So as we come to a close here, thank you all so much, not only for listening to this, but for listening to us in general and supporting us at redwebpod.com. It really means a lot. So thank you very much. All right, so a human arm comes up out of this shark. And from here, an investigation unfurls. Investigators want to know, how did a full human arm end up inside of the shark that was so publicly on display? And most importantly, was this the result of a horrible accident or some sort of foul play, right? I teased you a little bit of the path that lie ahead, but that's exactly the questions that everyone's asking in this moment. Because, as I'll come to discuss, this tank was under supervision from tourists, owners, and the like, pretty much non-stop, and so it almost seemed like there wouldn't be an opportunity for someone to enter the tank like that.
Yeah, it doesn't seem so at all.
Yeah. So before we get there, though, I want to wind back a little bit, right to the time that the arm comes out of the shark, because as luck would have it, somebody runs off to phone the police, but somebody else, another person of these 14 guests that witnessed this, was a person named Narcisse Leo Young, who was a proofreader at the Sydney Morning Herald newspaper. And so you also have somebody running off to immediately inform the presses. He's calling his boss, letting him know, hey, I don't know what's going on, but there's a story down at the aquarium, and I think let's get the team on this one.
Okay.
So what's interesting then is this left no gaps in the knowledge. Nothing could be sacred because police and press arrived at essentially the same time to all figure out what was going on. And I want to quote an excerpt from a police report. This is Detective Constable Frank Heed, who had this to say. Quote, I proceeded to the baths and there saw floating in the water the left arm of a human being, which had apparently been wrenched from the body at the shoulder joint. We retrieved the arm from the water and on examining it, found that it had 2 large incised wounds on the upper and lower parts respectively. We also found that the inside forearm, there was a tattoo mark of 2 men in the fighting attitude. There was tied around the wrist in a half-hitch knot a piece of cheap manila 3/4 inch rope. The arm is in a fair state of preservation except that the skin on the heel and palm of the hand has crumpled and become detached. So that would be kind of the lower part of your palm.
Yeah, maybe like it's getting peely or something.
Yeah, that's the part that seemed to have all of the damage, whereas everything else seemed to be perfectly preserved. By all reports, we have a perfectly preserved arm, considering that it had been inside of a shark for over a week.
A week? I mean, it does take a while for a shark to digest.
Sure.
But you think you'd see a lot of signs of it starting to get broken down. And
Right.
Okay, wow, a week.
A week. Yeah, I feel like if I ate a grape whole, I don't know if that's lasting till dinner time before it's looking a little worse for wear.
Yeah, it's torn, it's shreds. Hey, it might even be out the other end by then.
Hey, you know what? It might right out the other end. We don't know.
Depending on how much fiber I've had.
I know I'm not made out of grapes, but I digress. But here's the thing. Here's what's so mind-boggling. You know, we showed the arm. You see the tattoo, the skin, the hair. Investigators noted that the fingerprints are still largely intact. So the palm is kind of disintegrating, but the fingerprints on the pad of each of the finger are still primarily there. Constable John Lindsay was sent to the scene to delicately take samples of those fingerprints for testing. And he was able to pull some positive prints on those, and we'll talk about that in a second. But wild indeed. Already I'm wildly blown away. It just keeps going. So initially, detectives interviewed the Hobson brothers, Young, and several other witnesses who were present at the time of the incident. From this, they were able to determine that the aquarium had been under constant observation, meaning that there was no chance that someone could have fed the arm to the shark while it was in captivity, which immediately opens up the opportunity of like, well, now this goes to the entire city, right?
Yep.
If this shark ate an arm at sea, whose arm, first of all? Thankfully, we have tattoos. We can talk about that. But like, there's so many vectors to explore now. It's almost bottomless.
It could literally be as simple as a shark attack. And then here, then it just wound up being, I mean, it's a great story.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah.
Right? Someone's missing an arm. Hell, they could still be alive.
That's true.
No, you really think about it.
There it is. That's my arm.
Oh, damn, that's my arm.
That's my lucky rope I tie around my wrist sometimes.
Like, there is so much. I thought it was like, okay, murder case, try and feed it to a shark to hide the evidence. Boom, we're in that lane. No, this is wide open. Again, the person could still be alive.
It could be out there eaten with one hand.
Who knows at this point? It's interesting because of the fact that so many cases we cover, lack of evidence here or whatnot, and then you come to realize where it's just like, oh, we have so much evidence here.
Mm-hmm.
It's an arm that's mostly intact. And then we're pulling fingerprints off of it. There's an abundance of evidence here.
And the tattoo, it's just...
Yeah, and the tattoo.
These are pretty unique tattoos to be talking about. And so...
It really is.
People can go, oh, I know those. Huck Johnson, my drinking buddy down at the bar, he loves to go swimming one arm at a time.
Good old Huck. Yeah, he lost his arm to a shark.
Yeah.
And he's still doing one arm swims.
He's still doing it. Here's the thing. The fact that the aquarium was under constant supervision basically led investigators to believe that, as wild as it may seem, the shark must have eaten this arm before it was captured and brought into the aquarium.
Mm-hmm.
So the following day, government medical officer Arthur Palmer and shark attack expert Victor Koppelson, they come to the aquarium and examine this arm. Or obviously the arm's not at the aquarium anymore, but they're looking at it and they're examining it, and they come to a shocking conclusion. They look at the wound, right? The separation wound at the shoulder. And they notice that there is a distinctive lack of tooth marks, because when a shark bites and thrashes to pull off a piece of meat or a limb in this case, it would leave, in their experience, obvious ragged edges that would have been evidence of a shark bite.
Yep.
They don't see anything like that. They noted that the arm appeared to have been dismembered using a sharp tool like a cleaver or a machete, not something like surgical amputation, which would require a scalpel, which is a very sharp tool. But when looking at this, again, we have a medical examiner, and they're saying, well, if this was a scalpel cut, it would look this type of way.
Yeah.
And if it was an amputation, you would leave a certain amount of skin left behind, so that way you could suture closed the amputation wound.
Oh.
And so they're like, well, there's too much skin left on the amputated part, and so you wouldn't have been able to close that wound. And so they're basically saying, all right, well, whatever it was that happened here, somebody had a swift and strong felling of a machete or a cleaver.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. I mean, yeah, the way you cut something it leaves a mark, a certain type of cut. And like sharks have layers of teeth, rows of teeth.
Totally.
So that's going to cut through skin and bone in a different way than it would like a fine blade.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's tangible.
When you get into it and it's like, okay, it can't be this because that's what this cut looks like. Can't be that because that. And I'm like, oh, I'm eating it up.
But now think about police at that time. They're like, all right, we got ourselves an arm. We can figure this out. It's got fingerprints. I don't know why it's so well preserved. We'll get to the bottom of that. Oh, wait a minute. No, we think that this has been cut off and then consumed prior to the shark being caught. That's mind-blowing in and of itself.
Yep.
Now, they're starting to ask, okay, well then how did this arm survive so long? If it was prior to it being caught, that means it was over a week. And so they know this at the time. So they're kind of theorizing on that one, especially, they're thinking about the shark's erratic behavior. Well, maybe the rope attached to the wrist caught onto the gullet in some way, and that left the shark agitated for the entire time it was in captivity.
Oh, yeah, because why wasn't he just digesting it? And it's like, I got to throw this thing up.
Mm-hmm. There is the normal shark behavior in captivity. Some sharks do better than others, but they're thinking the fact that it might have been caught somewhere in the gullet, north of the stomach where the stomach acids would be and decay this arm down to little bits. Maybe this is why the shark was acting so strange. Maybe this is why the shark didn't want to eat. It felt something in its throat and just like, that was it. And so it just sat in there.
Like if this was someone trying to get rid of evidence, absolutely wild the chain of events that are happening here for you to get caught.
Picture this. You're the murderer.
Damn.
You're at home kicking it and you're changing the channels and they go, news today as arm comes up in aquarium. You're like, I dropped that out miles at sea.
Yeah.
It winds up in an aquarium?
Yep.
Yeah. Talk about bad luck. Or, for justice, great luck.
True. I mean, good luck for justice for sure. But I just like,
good luck to justice.
What are you talking about? This got found. There's nothing else for you to do.
Yes. So the following day, it's April 27th now, the shark is unfortunately killed, but it is a crime scene now. They want to figure out, is there anything else going on? So they dissect the shark. They want to see if there's any other clues that might lead to an identification. Maybe there's other body parts, but ultimately they find nothing. Just a few fish bones, which is obvious and what you would expect. Still, medical examiners were able to rule out a few possibilities. There was no way that the arm was torn off by the shark or motorboats or any other natural accident. It did seem to be very intentional. Also, it was not amputated by any sort of surgeon, which ruled out the possibility of a discarded cadaver from the Sydney Medical School, which is a great line of thinking.
Oh, I didn't even think about cadavers, dude.
It's innocent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, man. You just love an episode that they're just getting into it.
They're just getting into it, ruling stuff out.
We are digging deep. We're finding answers.
I like that they're also not immediately this is murder. No, they're like, well, I mean, school students operate on cadavers all the time. Maybe this was a freak accident. Who knows?
Yeah, true.
But then investigators have a breakthrough in the case. Due to the extensive press coverage following the case and all of the details, a man by the name of Edwin Smith actually came forward claiming that he believed the arm belonged to none other than his brother, James Smith, aka Jim, who we do have a photo of.
I mean, the tattoo is a giveaway for one.
That's pretty much it.
How can we prove it? It's just the tattoos. Like, that's my brother had that tattoo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what happened to the brother then?
What happened to the brother? That's a great question.
A brother would probably know what had happened to a brother.
We would hope. So we do have an image of him there. It does, I will say, film is a great medium. Maybe this is how the photo of Jim looks, but it also feels a little uncanny. So I just want to say maybe this was updated or sharpened by AI because the face feels a little off. But either way, this is James Jim Smith. Now, I do want to say Edwin reported that Jim had been missing for several weeks prior to this discovery and had a tattoo eerily similar on his own same arm. Now, I also want to say that there were other accounts that say, no, it wasn't Edwin Smith, his brother, but instead Gladys Smith, who would have been Jim's wife, that she was the one that noticed the tattoo was the same and that she called in for the positive identification. Either way, you have a Smith family member saying, I know that tattoo anywhere, and he's been missing for weeks. I think that might unfortunately be my family member. And sure enough, remember those fingerprints that were taken earlier? Well, they actually confirmed the match of Jim Smith.
Oh, wow, we have an answer.
We have an answer. However, we still have some questions, right? So we know who the victim is, but how did the pieces end up inside the shark at the local aquarium?
Yep.
And before we dive into the suspects, I think now we have to move from a shark crime case to now a missing persons case. We got to explore the man behind the arm. So, who was Jim Smith? I'm going to take you back to the previous decade. I think you really need to understand what makes him tick, because then you'll understand perhaps how he ended up in this predicament. So in the 1920s, Jim Smith owned a series of pool halls. However, these establishments were fronts for Jim's bookmaking operations, as he was a bookie. He's a person that takes bets. He's not a person that makes books and writes novels. He calculates odds. He pays out winners. Bada boom, bada bing. For context, this is illegal due to the Gaming and Betting Act of 1833. It made gaming houses and betting illegal in all of New South Wales, which is the state that Sydney presides in. But then jumping forward just a few years prior to this incident, 1930, He opens up an even fancier establishment. He calls this the Roselle Athletic Club, and he continued to use this as a front for his schemes. That goes on for a few years, and then in September of 1932, police raided the club as part of a statewide crackdown on illegal gambling. Jim had to pay a very large fine, but evaded jail time and was able to continue doing the operations of this club. But I want you to hold on to this idea that he avoids jail time because I have some speculation on that. There are some reports as to why that might be the case, but we'll get in there. So Jim's exact fine is unclear. The typical fine for somebody who opened, kept, used, managed, or otherwise assisted with a betting house, again, it's illegal, was upwards of 100 pounds, British pounds, which today would be 12,000 US dollars.
Okay, decent chunk.
A pretty healthy fee for any involvement in this, let alone somebody who was literally owning, operating, and running the whole joint. Now, Jim is a problem solver, and he needs to figure out how to pay this hefty fine. So, of course, he expands into unlicensed slot machines as a way to make this money, and the police find out. This is the final straw for the police, and they shut down his club for good, because again, you can't keep breaking the law in order to make money, and I have to say hats off to the police, because they could have said, hey, just keep greasing these wheels and we'll look the other ways. Sorry, Sydney police from the 1930s.
True, they could have taken bribes and whatnot.
Yeah.
But they didn't, and they were like, hey, shut it down.
So after this, Jim begins working odd jobs to make ends meet. Mostly, he was employed by two men in the maritime business. You have Albert Stannard and Reginald Holmes. These are two names I want you to hold on to, Stannard and Holmes, especially that second one. Still, bad luck seemed to follow Jim, and he continuously got himself into trouble, making it even harder for him to receive these gig jobs and then make that income. So he began to make money by forging checks, a skill he picked up from an old friend and a fellow bookie by the name of James Patrick Brady, aka Patty. Now, we do have a photo of Mr. Brady because we're going to be talking a lot about Brady as well. What's your take on Brady here?
Hey, here's a haircut that I used to have, just faded on the side and then just hair up top. He's got a suit. That's a very high-res, old-school photo.
Yes, sir. We grew up in the digital age where we thought pictures were supposed to be blurry and bad. Film is magic, man.
Yeah, this looks great. This is high detailed.
Yes, it is.
He's got a suit on and everything, looking fresh.
Yeah, I can also see in hindsight, I'll say this, in hindsight knowing this case, this man kind of scares me a little bit. I don't want to judge a book by its cover, but he's got a scary look on him.
Look, if you told me he was into some illegal activities, would not surprise me. You know what I'm saying?
Copy that. I'll let history tell you this. So,
Okay.
Flash forward to August 1934. Just to give you context, this is the year leading up to April 1935 when the incident happened. So, we're right there on the doorstep of the case. In August 1934, Jim and Brady have kind of a falling out, according to reports by his wife Gladys. Gladys states that Brady believed Jim owed him money, and on several occasions sent gunmen to their house in order to press him for this cash. Now, at some point, Jim reportedly went to Holmes, who I mentioned earlier, this is one of his gig employers, to tell them what was happening. And after that, things seemed to return to normal for a little bit. By April of 1935, things between Brady and Jim seemed to have been patched up. Reportedly on April 8th, 1935, Jim had woken up, eaten breakfast, and left the house at 9:30 a.m. He was wearing a light gray suit, tan shoes, a blue shirt, and a gray felt hat, and he told his wife that he was going to be gone while on business. He left his home to go meet Brady at the Hotel Cecil nearby in the town of Cronulla. This is the last time Jim Smith was ever seen and reported alive. On April 13th, a stranger called the Smith family home and told them that Jim wouldn't be coming home until the following Monday. That Monday came and went with no sign of Jim. Gladys grew worried and called around, but no one had seen her husband. In fact, it seemed that Jim had disappeared into thin air. That is, until what we just discussed, his arm suddenly appearing in the news having been vomited up by a shark in an aquarium at Coogee Beach, just 11 miles or 17.7 kilometers up the Sydney coast.
Oh, dang. So someone did get caught, found out.
Something happened to somebody, in this crime-ridden world, and Jim paid the ultimate price for whatever it might have been. We'll discuss that.
Yeah, it does seem like it's a murder case after all.
I will say, I'm going to get way ahead of the end here, because technically this case is unsolved. It is open and unsolved, period. But what we're about to explore between these two first suspects has been widely believed to be the answer. And we'll talk about that. I think you'll come to a similar conclusion, but I want to walk you into that. So first up, we're going to talk about the suspects Brady and Holmes and a trial that follows these two suspects. So remember how I talked about Jim meeting up with Brady there at Hotel Cecil? Well, police discovered that after getting a drink at Hotel Cecil, the two returned to a rented cottage on the shore of Gunnamatta Bay. This is where Jim's whereabouts become unknown. So we know he was at Hotel Cecil. We know he left with Brady. That's as far as it really goes. They go to the bay. It's reported that Brady knew about Jim's double life. Not only was Jim a member of organized crime, but also, it turns out he had become a confidential informant for the police and was relaying names of people like Brady and his gang members to the police. He became an informant. On the record. It is said that he felt cheated after previous ventures with Holmes and Standard had fallen through. He felt they owed him money for various things, and instead of coming clean or what have you, he just goes, you know what, look, I'm just going to become an informant, and that's how I'll get my payback.
Yeah.
And maybe this is also, in my speculation, how he avoided jail time for all of his gambling house crimes.
Yeah. I mean, you strike a deal.
Yeah. They're like, well, yeah, you're doing something illegal, but now you're kind of an informant, so we'll keep you out there, but you owe us.
Yeah. I mean, because ultimately the authorities want the bigger fish, right? Like,
yep.
It's like, okay, there's this guy, he's doing low crime stuff, whatever, but if we can cut off the head of the snake, that's the bigger catch here.
There you go. Exactly right. So naturally, in conclusion, having been with Brady last seen, Brady becomes the prime suspect. Jim had actually gotten a reprieve from his debts. Okay, so let me try to make this clear.
Okay.
Jim owed Brady money. Holmes owed Jim money. This is where a lot of the tension comes in. Jim is like, I'm going to become an informant because Holmes, you owe me money and you're not paying.
Yeah.
But also, I'm between a rock and a hard place because I owe Brady money and he's not letting me off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the few months prior to the incident of the shark arm, Brady skips town. He flees to none other than Tasmania to escape arrest. And this means that the heat is a little bit off of Jim because the guy he owes money to is kind of in the wind. And so that means the tension across this entire network is softened a little bit. That's just giving you some context for kind of how this web works. But now the details naturally come after the arm is discovered and Jim's identity is discovered. This is in the investigation phase now. So these suspects are greatly being looked at. And on May 1st of all times, as this is just a few days after the incident, a letter is delivered to the Smith home. One that was strange and didn't sound at all like Jim, despite who had supposedly signed it. So here's what the letter says, quote, "Son, keep your mother quiet. I am in a jam. I plead it's okay. Call the cops off. Tell your mom I will have plenty soon and we will be all right. They want me, something in town. Never mind. Be a man for me. Your loving father, Jim Smith. P.S. Destroy this." End quote. So this family letter shows up, supposedly from the dad, even though this arm is showing up in the shark.
Right.
But the family notes, this is not Jim's handwriting. This looks like a forgery.
Mm-hmm.
This looks like somebody basically saying, look the other way, family. I'm okay.
Yeah, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. It's all good.
Yes.
Like,
yes, I'm just busy.
That's not suspicious at all whatsoever.
Right. Now, in addition to this, as the case builds more, a local taxi cab driver comes forward with a possible lead. They state that the morning after Jim was last seen, Brady took a cab from Cronulla to North Sydney, then asked to be dropped off at a residence, and when checking the address of that residence, police found that it was none other than Reginald Holmes, who again had those business ties with Jim. He was helping hire him on some gigs. Now, the distance between Cronulla and North Sydney is approximately 19 to 22 miles or 30 to 35 kilometers, and so this is keeping it to a pretty tight window up and down the coast.
Yep.
I would say the aquarium itself is almost equidistant between these 2 points of interest. So now Holmes is in with Brady kind of as a suspect because the timing lines up. Why is Brady going to see Holmes after Jim disappears? Well, Holmes himself was no stranger to organized crime, having operated a smuggling ring using his speedboats to receive illegal substances. After tensions rose when they worked together, some theorized that Jim was blackmailing Holmes as he was a prominent businessman and public figure. Adding all this up, police turned to Holmes and Brady as suspects. So now it's a package deal. Somehow these two are working together, but the police don't have the concrete evidence to be able to tie these guys up in court and put them away for good. They just can't prosecute at this stage. They were both questioned, of course, but both, as you might imagine, denied any sort of involvement. Then on May 20th, 1935, the case took another turn. Holmes sailed out into the harbor on a speedboat and, while on the boat, attempted to commit suicide by shooting himself in the head. Although he did survive, he was gravely injured. It turns out, per a few resources here, he must have put the gun to his head, and I don't know if this was luck or an accident of some kind, but he shot himself in the thickest part of the skull.
What?
And that bullet lodged into his skull and didn't fully penetrate into his brain.
What?
Yeah.
What a crazy series of events is this episode.
It's wild.
Like, what do you mean? Okay.
So he's out in the boat. He's trying to commit suicide, shoots himself in the head. It doesn't work. But of course, he's still gravely injured. There's a lot of blood vessels and muscle around the skull. And so bleeding now, he falls into the water. But as luck would have it, this case is riddled with coincidence. He happens to have a rope caught on his wrist. It prevents him from drowning. Basically, he falls in and this rope catches his wrist and keeps him above the water. And the cold of the water shocks him back to consciousness, and he kind of wakes up, bleeding, confused, climbs back into the boat, and then tries to flee the scene. So once again, a rope around the wrist changes destiny.
What?
You couldn't, if you wrote a movie like this?
The series of events here, you would sit here and you would think, yeah, this only happens in movies.
Right.
Or television.
Heck, if you wrote this in a movie, it would feel outlandish.
Yeah, it would. I'd be like, come on, what are the chances of that? And what are the chances of that? No way. And here we are.
Here we are. For 4 hours, police chase him through Sydney Harbor as he's drifting in and out of consciousness. This must be a relatively slow police chase, but obviously they don't want to risk anyone else's harm or what have you, so they're being careful. But he does eventually give up, and he's taken to the hospital to have the bullet removed, and once he recovers enough, he is then arrested, and at this point he finally begins to talk. He named Brady as the killer, leading to Brady's official arrest. Here's where we have essentially a deathbed confessional. Although Holmes lives, he's been through so much, I think he's just like, listen, I can't handle this anymore. I'm gonna squeal. Here it is.
All right, yeah.
So here's his full story. Holmes details the process that he had with Albert Stannard and the other maritime businessmen. In the 1920s, the pair started running building scams and used Jim as one of their proxies. But when the Great Depression hit, they had to move on to other scams in order to make money. So now they're moving into insurance scams. They're buying boats, going out into the harbor, sinking those, collecting the insurance money, rinse and repeat. I don't know why a man named Holmes keeps losing his boats or why he keeps getting insurance payouts, but I digress. I guess it's working.
At some point you're like, hey there, buddy.
I mean, again, he's got proxies, so maybe he's using people like Jim.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Jim lost a boat, and then Huck lost a boat, and then Tim lost, Tim, Jim, and Kim are all losing their boats. And once again, they turn to, in this new phase, this insurance scam, they did turn to Jim as a new proxy if anything ever went wrong. However, in one instance, things did go wrong, and so they turned to Jim, who then, Jim is like, listen, I was kind of on board being your proxy. I can't eat the cost of this mistake. I can't buy this boat under my name and lose it.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, you owe me this money now. You owe me the money that's promised. And then Holmes and Stannard refused to pay him. So now he's like, well, okay, I've got you dead to rights. I know what you've done. I'm going to start forging checks in your name, Holmes.
Damn.
That's how I'm going to make this money. You can't do anything about it. So Holmes is complaining, but Jim threatens him with blackmail, stating that if you ever reveal what I'm doing, I'll just reveal what you're doing to the police. And so Holmes is kind of tied up. He goes, all right, fine. So basically, Jim was either going to get his money or he was going to keep using Holmes's identity to get that money through forged checks. So if you remember, Brady fled to Tasmania in August of 1934, and Jim owed Brady all that money, which is why I think he was keeping the pressure on Holmes, because he's like, I can't afford this loss. I owe this other sinister dude lots of money.
Mm-hmm.
This whole situation softens when Brady runs to Tasmania, which makes Jim kind of think, well, maybe I don't need to pressure Holmes as much anymore. Maybe Brady's gone for good. But unfortunately, Brady did return to the scene, and he came back pretty pissed off. He was furious when he learned that Jim had been snitching on people.
Yeah.
Even though he was put into this hard place, he turned into an informant. And so he goes, in his anger, he says, I'm going to cut out this middleman. He goes to Holmes directly and he says, hey, Holmes, we both have a thorn in our sides. Why don't I take care of him? And then neither of us will have these problems. Holmes then, in his story, says that, well, Brady then returned to him on April 9th, claiming that the deed had been done. This taking care of Jim, murdering him, was done on April 9th. That's what he's telling police. And Brady then, in that moment, assures Holmes that Jim's body had been weighed down and dumped into the ocean to be completely untraceable. And this is why Brady went to Holmes's house. However, I know what you're thinking. His body's in the ocean. How'd the arm come off?
Right.
Well, in order to prove that he killed and sunk Jim's body, he brought the severed arm with him.
What?
Yeah.
I feel like there's so much. You could an ear.
Yeah, right.
Or just like carve out the skin with the tattoo in it. You know what I'm saying? A whole arm, dude. You're going above and beyond. You're really. You slapped that in front of me, and I would have been like, okay, you didn't need to give me this much proof. I believe you.
Right. I believe. Whoa. Oh, the whole thing. Yeah, dude. I think you're totally right. Cut off something identifiable. Period.
Like, get that away from me.
You don't need to take the whole arm. What is he going to do with an arm? He comes to his door, throws the arm in the house, and goes, he's done. Now you're caught. You're stuck with this arm.
Yep.
What do you do with it?
I don't know. It's a whole arm. I'm like, get it away from me. Throw it back out there.
Right. You go back to sea and sink this too. Well, that's his proof. That's what Holmes is telling police. And this is why you don't do dealings with people who owe things, because I'm looking at this, in exchange, right? In this exchange, he's like, all right, I got rid of Jim. Holmes is like, great. All of our problems are solved. And Brady goes, no. That's not how this works. I'm taking over Jim's blackmail scheme. I'm taking over his debts. Because if you owe Jim and Jim owes me, in the crime world of transitive property of debt, you owe me.
Oh, God. They're all just screwing each other over.
Yes. So he's like, I'm just going to get rid of Jim and I'm going to go straight to you. And that's how I'm going to get my money. So, of course, Holmes is now deeply distraught. He's still caught up in this blackmailing scheme. And in addition to that, he's now tied to something even worse, murder.
Yep.
So he leaves. He goes out to sea with a bottle of alcohol and Jim's arm. And I can only imagine he's sitting there with Jim's arm propped up on a chair, having a soliloquy about what just went down, apologizing to Jim. And then he tosses the arm overboard.
And then it gets scooped up by a shark. What do you mean? And then there's this whole story of people screwing each other over behind the scenes. What an insane story.
Yup. The arm ends up in the ocean and the rest is history. The tiger shark happens to eat the arm. It gets caught in the gullet. The tiger shark then happens to eat a shark that was eating a mackerel that's caught on a line. The shark lives, gets pulled in, taken to an aquarium. He's like, I'm still struggling with this human arm, throws it up. And here goes the cycle of the shark arm case. It's so wild. But it gets deeper.
What do you mean?
It gets deeper. I love this. What do you mean? It's a wild case. Okay, so this is a confession, but we don't have evidence. So now he needs to sit in front of a jury. He needs to go to court so he can say all this so a jury can put this Brady man away and Holmes away by association. But just hours before the inquest into the murder of Jim Smith, Reginald Holmes is found dead at 1:20 a.m. June 12, 1935, having been shot in his car 3 times by a .32 caliber pistol. And with Holmes as the only witness, there is no case against Brady.
Yeah.
The only other person is the taxi driver who happened to take him to Holmes's house that night. The taxi driver said that he testifies. He says that Brady looked disheveled, nervous, white as a sheet, always kept one hand hidden in his pocket. But of course, that's not enough to prosecute somebody. Maybe he just had a bad night or something. But in less than 2 days, a judge found Brady not guilty, and Brady was released. All the evidence provided around Brady was deemed to be circumstantial, hence his declaration of innocence.
It just seems like he was dead to rights, but I mean, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, you would think so.
Damn. Yeah, the whole court system, I get there's rules and regulations. And sometimes I'm just like, what do you mean this person's just walking free?
Come on, the only witness who confessed in the hospital to the police winds up dead via gunshot hours before he's meant to show up in court. Come on. I know that is not proven, and I wouldn't want to set a precedent because,
right.
You don't want that in the legal system.
Yeah, that's the problem there too.
But as a human drawing conclusions, come on. Well, we'll close the loop on Brady here in a little bit. I want to talk about one more suspect.
Okay.
This one's not super deep. This one comes to us from an author named Alex Castles. They suggested, and it's mostly circumstantial, there's not much else to go on, but they suggested it's possible Jim was murdered by a young man named Eddie Wayman. So as I mentioned earlier, it was reportedly revealed that Jim had been an informant for police. And in fact, Wayman and one of his friends were caught in a raid on a bank. And the way the police caught them during this raid was because Jim had provided the information. And so Castles, the author, goes on to suggest that in retaliation, Wayman might have murdered Jim for snitching on him and getting him caught mid-raid or mid-heist. However, it's unclear if Wayman was ever investigated by police for the murder of Jim Smith, but that's all we have on that. And if that's the case, there's several criminals who would probably have it out for Jim as an informant.
Yeah.
But ultimately, though, like I said, I'll close the loop. Brady spent the rest of his life in and out of jail, not for murder, but for forgery crimes. And while he definitely had an extensive rap sheet, he maintained his innocence in the murder case of Jim Smith until his death in 1965. He goes, yeah, I'm a criminal, but not a murderer. I mean, to this day, though, I want to get your thoughts. But to this day, even though it's largely believed that Brady committed the crime by anybody who knows about this case, it does remain one of Australia's most well-known unsolved crimes.
I feel like it's solved, but I mean, I get it. He wasn't even persecuted for murder, it was like other crimes and stuff.
Right. Yep.
Man, dude. I feel like we have him dead to right. Of course, I was like, all the evidence is laid out. Here we go. Now we're going to follow the trail here. This is what's going to happen. And like, we follow the trail, and it's just like these 3 people betraying and twisting each other. And then it's just like, okay, well, you can't really get him for that. You can't really get him for murder. So, and of course, he's still doing other stuff. I'm like, dude, you're literally getting away with murder, or maybe you are, right?
Yeah, right. In theory.
It seems like you're getting away with murder. And then you're still doing these other things, these forgeries. I'm like, what are you doing? You got away with it. Get out of there. Run. Leave. Stop. Like, stop messing around, dude. Like, yeah.
Yeah, dude, it's weird. And listen, Holmes makes a confession that lines up with every timeline that we know with the disappearance and everything, but it's also possible there's a hair of a chance that Holmes is making up a story.
Yeah.
Can you just believe it? I don't know. I'm inclined to, but man, it's wild. I mean, if the shark hadn't eaten the arm, if the arm hadn't been taken out, if the arm hadn't been taken as evidence, But like all of these random low chance probability things all stack up and work out to the tune of like, if Holmes had successfully committed suicide, if this had...
That's true too. Like his plan was to commit suicide.
Yeah, we wouldn't have anything. So again, Brady makes the bold approach that killing a guy is the solution,
right?
But that evidence should be given of an entire arm. And the evidence of the arm is probably given to your observation because the tattoo is identifying. And for some reason, there's rope attached to the wrist. So when Holmes throws it out, two things happen. One, the arm goes down and gets eaten by a shark, but caught in the throat because of the rope.
That's the rope.
And Holmes himself is caught, so he doesn't even drown. And he wakes back up, gets back in the boat. So two random things happen. Holmes goes off to tell what we maybe believe to be the truth, popular thinking. The arm goes on to not get digested and stay in the shark, so it can then be regurgitated in the public eye. What in the world?
Yeah, it's what an insane series of events. Like,
Truly.
What do you mean? What do you mean all these things happen? I wouldn't believe it, but here we are.
Yeah, this is the point where a pun may be a little bit more intended, where if it was a movie, you would say the plot, jump the shark. With that, raucous applause for the pun. Thank you all, Task Force, so much. I want to shout out a few Task Force members this very week. We have our newest member of the Elite Task Force, Jacob Gilbert. Thank you so much for joining us at redwebpod.com. Our buff scientist of the week is Rab McComb. And then, of course, we have our squonks to shout out, Gavin Day, Low K, and Holster. But man, twisty-turny episode. Thank you again so much to Piplup Cola. If you want to submit an episode like this, or you have a mystery that we haven't covered, let us know.
I do see why this is a very, like, what is it, one of the bigger cases in Australia?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. You even have some of the wildlife partaking in the actual mystery itself with, when everyone hears about Australia, they're talking about like, oh, the spiders and the animals and the sharks, and a very Australian case.
A very Australian case, to the tune of like yet another coincidence kind of being that these guys went out to go get a shark in the first place.
Yeah, that's true.
It was an enigma that people wanted to see.
And put it in a pool.
Yeah, put it in a pool. Quit putting sharks in pools, folks.
No, man. What a bizarre case.
Truly, but certainly one for the ages. But if you've made it this far, Task Force, or you're new to the Task Force, we want to thank you very, very much. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Man, I feel like, we've been doing this show for 5.5 years, maybe coming up on 6, and it feels like we're on a run of particular bangers. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
But we're in a Renaissance era of like cases that I'm blown away that we haven't covered yet.
And after how many years? You know what I mean?
After how many years? And we also have other things going on that you should look out for. We have our Scary Stories podcast that should have come out recently. We're still programming in advance, so keep an eye out for that. We want to bring that back with more consistency. You saw the pilot. You helped us make the pilot. Now we're bringing it back around. And we have other things coming along too. Some ghost hunts that we still owe you guys, a video essay. Just lots happening. So if you want to stay in tune with us, feel free to join us. You can sign up even for free at redwebpod.com. Every single week, we'll tease the episode ahead of time. So that way, even if you're joining us for free, you still get some goodies over at the .com. But with that said, Fredo, a doozy under our belts.
Yes, it is. That's a good one. That's a new favorite for sure.
I thought it might be. Because as we were exploring this one together, me, Kat, and Christian, we just coming, what? Just like it peeled and peeled.
I know. What do you mean this? What do you mean that?
Layers. But with that said, Fredo, I'll see you right back here next Monday for yet another mystery.